Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new episode of Stories from Space podcast, where your host, Matthew Williams, examines the history of human spaceflight, the breakthroughs that revolutionized our understanding of the universe and our place in it, and the brave individuals who work tirelessly to advance the frontiers of our understanding. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hello, sir. Not bad. Well, yes, I want to thank you for joining me, or rather, allowing me to join you. Let me just quickly change my background to the appropriate thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, we're good. So, yeah, we got a note taker there. So does this? Are you guys recording this?
I'm recording it, so I can just give that to you.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And yeah, as long as the sound level is good. Okay, so I should do a quick intro here because I know you're a busy man and well, you're booked for a lot of these. So yeah, this is my podcast, Stories from Space, and yeah, the content of which is pretty self-explanatory. And so yeah, today we're just going to be talking about you and what you're doing, and of course the current state of space and so forth. So, and I will, to save time, I'm going to add in the intro segment where I say everything about you, who you are, just, well, the relevant details, you know, titles and such. So, yeah, is it okay if we just like jump straight in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll just say, start with, you know, then what I would say after introducing you and all that and say, yeah. And you are a doctor, yes? Your title?
Yes.
Okay. I figured as much. But yes, so I'll address you as that. Dr. Jah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, but you don't have to address me as that, man. Just call me Moriba. It's all good.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. Moriba, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Now, obviously, I have a lot of questions relating to your background, your experience, your advocacy. However, what I wanted to, well, first of all, you are a self-described celestial steward. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because it does speak to your whole mission statement, as I understand it.
Yeah, so I guess the way that I really came into this is after working at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab for a number of years on Mars missions. My job there was as a spacecraft navigator, so really doing orbit determination and prediction, mostly for Mars missions. I took a trip to Maui in 2004 with my family at the time for an astrodynamics conference. And during the 9 days that we were on Maui, my family fell in love with the place. And on the way back to Pasadena, my spouse at the time told me in no uncertain terms that, you know, my days at JPL were numbered because, you know, Maui needed to be home. And so I was able to, over the next year or so, I was able to find a job on Maui working for the Air Force Research Laboratory. So in 2006, relocated to Maui. I was the astrodynamics lead at the Air Force Research Laboratory there. And they have telescopes on top of Mount Haleakala. And I had no idea how much stuff was in Earth orbit. And at the time, lo and behold, the Department of Defense was cataloging about 26,000 objects ranging in size from cell phone to the largest objects. I guess the Mir space station had already re-entered by then. And in different orbits, and only 1,200 of the 26,000 were working, and everything else was trash. And to me, that was mesmerizing. For 90 some odd percent of all human-made stuff that we're tracking to be garbage. And living on Maui, there's all these microclimates, and any sort of behavior that's unsustainable seems to be more salient. And looking at landfills, single-use plastics exacerbated by tourism, and debris in the ocean juxtaposed with all the trash in Earth orbit, that struck a nerve with me. And along with that, seeing how native Hawaiian culture really embraces interconnectedness, and they see themselves first and foremost as stewards of things, not owners of land or anything like that. And clearly, they've been displaced through colonialism. So I think those things coming together planted some seeds for me in terms of wanting to do something about the space environment. And that's where my path on environmentalism kind of began. But in a trip that I took some years later with my son to Alaska so that he could see where his name came from. And by the way, his name's not McKinley. It's so
Yes.
I took Denali to see Denali, and I saw very similar things in Alaska that I saw in Hawaii, and I had call it a spiritual epiphany, and I felt that some presence was asking me to do everything that I could to prevent humanity from completely forgetting our intergenerational contract of stewardship and the interconnectedness amongst all things, and to behave from a place of empathy. And so those became my pillars, and I became a celestial steward.
Yes. Thus, really illustrating the interconnectedness, life here on Earth, our presence in space. To quote one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite people, Dr. Cyan Proctor, and she does not really recall the origin of this quote, but solving for space solves for Earth, and that works the other way around, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Lessons, yes. In any case, so yes, orbital debris, as my listeners are no doubt aware. I will be doing a segment on that at some point there, because of course the numbers are staggering, but the situation as it stands to become. And how exactly would you describe the situation as it's evolving there, and how the likelihood it's going to have to impact Earth?
Well, I'll put it this way, right? I would first encourage your listeners to check out this thing that I developed at the University of Texas at Austin, where I'm faculty in the Aerospace department, called Astriograph. I was able to kind of operationalize that in something called Wayfinder in one of my companies, Privateer Space, headquartered on Maui. So if you go to wayfinder.privateer.com, you could see all these dots that we're tracking. And so the thing is, Earth orbital space is not infinite. It's a finite resource. We put these robots in the sky that we call satellites that do good things for us. We put them in very specific places, call them orbital highways. So just like their regular highways, and then their shipping lanes and their airways, their specific orbits. And unfortunately, we started launching things in 1957 with Sputnik, and every single thing that we launch, except for a couple of them, are single-use space systems. Meaning, we send the stuff up, we put it in an orbit, eventually the gas tank goes to empty, and it stays there for many, many years, if not decades, centuries, or longer, depending on the altitude. And so what we do is, because it's like a single-use plastic equivalent, we just launch another one and another one and another one. And then people from many different countries are just launching whatever they want as frequently as they can without any sort of global coordination or planning in how to utilize this finite resource. And so what we see is kind of this impending tragedy of the commons, where we have a finite resource, we have an increasing number of participants utilizing the resource with disregard in how any single entity is utilizing it, consuming it without any sort of planning. And that means that the carrying capacity of these orbits to allow us to have satellites that can provide us with critical services and capabilities, internet, communications, and whatnot, that carrying capacity is going to become consumed or saturated, preventing us from utilizing orbital space, because we're going to have to be dodging things so frequently that we can't get any science or meaningful services out of it. So that's the path that we're currently on.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I recall asking you a question about this not that long ago, and it was with reference to how deorbiting space junk, how it also threatens systems, ecosystems, and people here on Earth, and that there needs to be incentive. What I'm trying to say is these strategies for cleaning up orbital debris, right? There are several that are in development. But Earthside, what needs to happen in order to really help this problem from spiraling out of control?
Yeah, well, I look at waste management principles on land, ocean, and that sort of stuff. And when I do that, I see that there is the need to clean things and then the need to stop producing more pollution. When it comes to the stop producing more pollution, generally we embrace things called circular practices. And people also can call these circular economies, where we prioritize the prevention of pollution through, first and foremost, reuse and recyclability. And right now, like I said, everything that we launch in space pretty much constitutes a single-use space system. So we have a linear economy in space. So that's adding junk, because the end state, the destiny of everything that we launch is to become garbage. That is the way we're doing business. That has to change to where everything that we launch is no longer garbage at its end of life. It can be recycled, it can be reused, it can be repurposed. So that's where humanity needs to go next, is reusable, recyclable space systems. Now, the next rung under reuse and recycling is disposal. If you can't reuse and recycle. And right now, what we do is we abandon. Things stop working, mostly because they run out of gas. They're just aimlessly in orbit at the mercy of the space environment. And if they're in a sufficiently low Earth orbit, then they will re-enter by natural causes, and they go through a process of incineration in the atmosphere, mostly polluting the atmosphere during the incineration, hopefully completely burning up in the atmosphere to prevent any of them from making it to the Earth's surface. But as you've seen, and people can see through evidence, we have a growing frequency of things being launched into space that are making it back to the Earth's surface, and not far from populated areas. When it comes to the cleaning part, It's much like trying to clean the oceans. The oceans will never be absent microplastics or any of these things. So space is very similar in that we need to clean some of the objects that are currently consuming orbital capacity needlessly, but orbital space will never look like it did in 1956.
Yes. In fact, if certain, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, if certain commercial space entities get their way, it's going to have mega constellations up there, as well as, interestingly enough, private space stations, commercial space stations. And yes, I would think this does present an opportunity for some very serious litigation and litigiousness. And in fact, you are also an expert in space law and an advocate for that. Are you part of the Space Generation Advisory Council?
So yeah, so I'll say that I'm not a space lawyer. I play one on TV, kind of thing. I have some knowledge of space policy, and I'm not part of the SGAC because that's mostly for younger people. But I am part of the International Institute for Space Law. But I participate as a technical person, but not as a lawyer. But yeah, so I am in the circles of policy and that sort of thing.
Well, I imagine they love hearing from you, the young people at SGAC. Yeah, and then in addition to your advocacy, which is well established here for sustainability in space, recently you've been rather outspoken about recent trends in politics, the current administration, I don't want to sound polemic, but the chaos that they've created, and also rather their very specific targeting of DEI. I've also heard the term DEIA, and how that pertains to not just the government workforces, but also NASA and science and so forth. Yes. Now, in your opinion, this has the obvious potential of setting space back by silencing or dismissing diverse opinions and people with different perspectives. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's extremely more than fair to say, and I'll say that all of my work is really focused on two pillars. One of them is enshrined in issues dealing with sustainability, land, air, ocean, and space, and beyond. And the other one is social justice. And both present themselves when it comes to space exploration and space activities. And so one of the things that I tell people is that power does not reside in controlling outcomes, but rather in our ability to make choices. And so the most powerful tend to be people that either try to convince you that you don't have a choice to make, or try to convince you that you're better off relinquishing your choice making to them because they can make the better choices for you. Given that, we can see evidence of where that has left us, and that's no good. Basically, when it comes to humanity being empowered to participate in space exploration and space activities, we're far from that because those making decisions are very few people. So they have all the power, and they're making decisions that the rest of us have to live with, and not just us, but 7 generations from now. The voices of the unborn, which is criminal. And the way that our current government has decided to go is away from the empowering of humanity to participate in space access, exploration, and activities, but to further cement the isolation of that power amongst very few humans to the detriment of all of us. And one of the things that I tell people is, they say, well, why is space sustainability so important when we have problems on the surface with we need clean water, better education, all these things? And my response to these folks is that satellites provide us with data, information, services, and capabilities that are unique and that no other sources provide us. We know more about ourselves because of satellites than by any other source of information. The things that actually help us manage water, energy, power, disaster areas, fires, the things that help us manage these things are all satellites or going through space-based systems. So if we lose the ability to have satellites because the pollution gets in the way of us being able to operate these things and hinders their ability to be operated, we lose a critical source of data and information that now has a cascading effect that compromises our ability to live sustainably on the planet. So if space becomes unsustainable, Earth becomes unsustainable. Just like that. That's its criticality. And so when very few people are making all the decisions based on their myopic, self-serving, self-aggrandizing agendas, it's to the detriment of the rest of humanity that has the responsibility, not even the right. Humanity has the responsibility to be the custodian of the environment that we are a part of because we're not separate from that environment. And so it's the decisions of a few are arbitrarily removing us from being able to exercise our responsibility of custodianship and stewardship. And I find that to be socially criminal.
And you touched on something here. I'd love to ask other science communicators and advocates for space, and yes, astrophysicists, everybody in this field. I'd love to ask them, how often do you get asked, why space? Shouldn't we be fixing Earth first? The attitude that these two things are separate, right? And we can fund one or the other, but we can't do both. And yes, I think that illustrates it very beautifully there. And yeah, once again, shows that what we do in space is very much connected to what we do on Earth. Yeah, one thing I was very interested to see, you wrote not too long ago via LinkedIn about how human beings are not meant for living on other planets, other bodies in the solar system, etc. Now, is this to say that living and working in space is not something you think is sustainable?
So what I feel is similarly to how people can go and can summit a place like Everest, similarly to how people can take a submersible and inspect the Mariana Trench and these sorts of things, and even put on scuba gear and hang out on the bottom of the ocean and chill out with like sharks and stuff like that. These are places that, mind you, it's on a common planet. It's not someplace else. These are places that we can visit. We could even work, but we can't live permanently. there is no permanent human settlement that's going to happen in the Mariana Trench. There's no permanent human settlement that's going to happen on the peaks of the Himalayas and that sort of stuff, for good reason. I mean, you don't have all the resources there. We didn't evolve in those sorts of environments. So if we can't do that on our own planet, why would we even begin to think that we can do it on a place where we did not evolve, that doesn't have all these resources, where the radiation, the gravity, magnetic field, all these things are either different or they're altogether non-existent. That's not a thing. So we can visit these places, and we should continue to explore. Visiting the places is just fine. Expanding where humans can have a presence, but in terms of permanence, that's where I think that's a science fiction novel at best. And we're better served, in my opinion, to invest in the science and technology that helps us create a species, probably mostly robotic, that can thrive and carry the best parts of us in our consciousness to other parts of the universe, but not Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens, just like other hominids have, through evolution, we've had other hominids, Neanderthals and Homo naledi and these sorts of things. Homo sapiens is not the end state of humans. It just happens to be where we're at in our current evolution. Homo sapiens doesn't make it in space. Homo machina, Homo something else might, but not Homo sapiens, in my opinion.
You said it just as I was getting ready to ask it there. You said it. Because, of course, the science fiction fan in me is a little disheartened to hear that kind of stuff, although it makes perfect sense. So, would you agree that some form of transcendence, augmentation, right? Everything that the singularitarians talk about, right? That is going to be necessary for humanity to actually live in space and,
and I think it's
and,
already
and go to adventures. Yeah,
it's already happening, because the thing is, we're already incorporating more machine elements within our bodies, one of our heads, right? We got this Neuralink thing or whatever. Like, we're already headed there. We're already trying to develop humanoids and these sorts of things, and we want the humanoids to be as close as they can to us in terms of like facial expressions and how they feel and like all these things, right? But they're not subject to the same limitations and constraints that our human bodies are subject to. And can human consciousness reside in another frame or structure that's not the body that we have? Maybe. So yeah, I mean, so I think it's some sort of synthesis between machines and what we currently know as Homo sapiens that'll be like the next thing.
Well, you've said several quotable quotes during this interview, sir, and especially I love power resides not in controlling outcomes but making choices. But everything you just said there, that is hit me with another sci-fi moment here, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's good science fiction right there. And I don't usually bring this up in the course of my podcast as a general rule, but I do love to write science fiction on the side. Do you mind if I borrow a little from what you said there? Because
not at all. It would be
well,
yeah,
good.
it would be very flattering. So please do.
Thank you. And yes, I will be editing that part out. I just wanted to say it.
Yeah.
But in any case, yeah. So getting back to what we're saying, in terms of humanity's future in space. So if I were to bottom line this, would you say that humanity living and thriving on Earth in a way that is sustainable in the future a population that's naturally come down to several billion, but not double digits, and augmented humans and robots doing the work of off-world exploration and perhaps also resource exploitation. That this is the way, if you had to put money down on it, is this the way the future is going to be?
Absolutely. And I think that um, if humans are going to have some sort of, let's say, permanence off of the planet, the the environment that the humans are in has to be replicated nearly identically to what's here. So unless we can build a Noah's Ark equivalent, because it's not just people, the human experience, we didn't evolve isolated from trees, plants, animals, smell of some manure by a farm. We evolved with these things. To think that you can separate the human from plants and animals and that we would thrive, I think is ludicrous. There's no reason to believe that that could happen. And so, unless we're ready to transport cats, dogs, aardvarks, all this other stuff, and have an environment that replicates the one on Earth with something that feels a lot like behaves a lot like gravity, behaves a lot like the magnetic field that we have, behaves a lot like the radiation doses that we're used to taking, behaves a lot like the air that we typically, all that stuff. It has to be a lot of behaves like, and we haven't even been able to develop a behaves like on this planet. I mean, Biosphere didn't even do that. So the thing is, we have to prove that we can construct a behaves like here before we even think that that's going to be possible elsewhere.
Yeah, and I've spoken to several people who are doing that research, and they completely and utterly agree with you. And in fact, they've even used the term terraforming to define bioregenerative living systems in space. And I thought that was very interesting. Yes, no matter where we go, we're going to have to we're going to have to bring Earth with us.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I'll say this. And I don't have a whole lot of time left, but I'll say this.
Yes.
I am definitely a proponent for terraforming. So some people say, oh well, you're into sustainability and all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I'm part of the environment too. And so the thing is, when you talk to many indigenous people, because some people say, oh, the epitome of the environmentalist is to make no trace of their existence. Everything has to be pristine. It's like, no, that's as if I was not part of the environment. The fact that I exist needs to be accounted for. I exist, and I need to exist and do things to make myself continue to exist. So utilizing resources is not a bad thing. Utilizing resources in ways that is unsustainable, that's the bad thing. So to me, taking some planet and changing it, modifying it in a way that allows us to exist and life as we know it to exist, if we have the agency to do that and do that in a way that is compassionate and empathetic, we should do it.
So, yeah, not the leave no trace rule, but more like the campfire rule or
Right.
campsite rule. Yes. Leave
Exactly.
it better than you found it.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, yes, I think that's the perfect place for us to end here. And obviously, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. And I hope to talk further about this, especially knowing you're a proponent of terraforming is very, very near and dear to me.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yes. And I wonder, would you be averse to me sending you some materials? Because I happen to be a bit of a crackerjack when it comes to terraforming, and then I just had a paper published as part of a volume by Les Johnson, Ken Wright.
Okay.
And yeah, rather than say, "Oh, buy the volume when it comes out," because six way share.
Sure.
Yes, I would love to just send you a PDF of what I wrote, and
Cool, man.
because that's a short read.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming on and joining us here today. And I think it goes without saying, I hope that we can do this again sometime, because there is such a wealth of things to talk about, and your answers have only inspired more questions, and of course, yes, I would very much love it if I could quote you on multiple things you've said.
Do that as much as you have full freedom, and have at it, and we'll definitely sync up again, my brother.
Thank you so much. Well, you have a great day.
You too, and I'll
And,
send you the summary of this, okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right.
Okay.
Aloha.
Well, that was great. You have a wonderful day, and thank you so much again.
Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stories from Space podcast with Matthew Williams. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.